Why do most people believe that the Earth's 4.5 billion years old? Now, if you ask this question to most scientifically literate people, they will answer that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. But if you ask biblically literate people, many will answer that it's little more than 6,000 years old. So why the huge difference? I mean, we're all looking at the same world, but of course we come to different conclusions because of our views. Our starting worldviews are different. Figuring out the biblical date's pretty easy. The chronogenealogies in Genesis make it clear Abraham lived about 2,000 years after creation. And we know from the chronologies found elsewhere in the Bible that Abraham lived about 2,000 years BC. And of course, we know that Jesus' ministry was about 2,000 years ago. So summing this all up, we get approximately 6,000 years. Now, how do many scientists arrive at the 4.5 billion years? Well, mostly on radiometric dating, but it's a little more complicated than it sounds. You see, some rocks contain bits of radioactive atoms, and these radioactive atoms decay into stable atoms over time. And by knowing the decay rate, and you can measure the amounts, scientists can estimate the amount of time it took to produce these stable atoms. But there are some assumptions involved. Were some of the stable atoms in the rock to begin with? Did some of either type of atom leave or enter the rock during the time of being measured for decay? These aren't absolute measurements here. How do we know? Because there's lots of examples that measuring the age of rocks by different methods give different ages. Scientists have found many evidence that the Earth is far younger than 4.5 billion years, even as young as 6,000, but these are usually swept under the rug. And even if you accept these ages, there are many other assumptions that cause some major problems. You see, scientists never find rocks on Earth that date back 4.5 billion years. The Earth's really dynamic. It's volcanic. We've got eruptions, tectonic plate movements, these types of things that recycle old rocks into new ones. When rocks are recycled, scientists believe that their radiometric dates are reset. So you wouldn't expect to find these primordial rocks on Earth. Instead, scientists look to other bodies in space that are less active geologically, like the moon. Searching for primordial rocks was one of the scientific reasons we sent men to the moon. Scientists thought that since the moon was less volatile than Earth, its rocks would be older. And moon rocks generally yield older radiometric dates, but even they don't yield dates of 4.5 billion years. Why? Well, see, the moon is far less active now. That hasn't always been the case. Most scientists think that the moon was very active earlier on, so the moon rocks aren't primordial either. To find those rocks, scientists look at meteorites, debris that have fallen on Earth from somewhere else. So the 4.5 billion year age of the Earth comes from radiometric dating of meteorites. And how can they know these are the earliest rocks? Well, they have a theory that the whole solar system formed at the same time, around 4.5 billion years ago. And this means the sun and the planets would be about the same age. So material that didn't become part of the sun supposedly coalesced into these larger and larger pieces, eventually forming planets and their satellites or moons, but supposedly some didn't. Fragments of these are thought to be the origin of meteorites. And since meteorites avoided the geologic processes that reset the radiometric ages of the Earth, they must be more accurate. But continue to notice all of the unproven evolutionary assumptions here. For decades, scientists who said the Earth is billions of years old said that it was because of radiometric dating methods. But this wasn't always the case. Radiometric dating developed about 100 years ago. Prior to that, many scientists already believed the Earth was billions of years old because of the assumption that life evolved from non-life. Evolutionists recognize that we can't see planets and life evolving before our eyes, so they say it must have happened over a long time. The Earth has to be old. So what's the lesson here? Assumptions that the Earth is old drove assumptions that evolution is true, which drove assumptions that the world is older and older. Evolutionists need deep time for their worldview. And where does the idea of an ancient Earth come from ultimately? From a worldview that requires it, in spite of a ton of scientific data that contradicts it.